Security level: Vermilion. Noxino Nofa Nociv. File number: GX8810 B467. War Department number: 7/32-16-12. This data is restricted under Dominion Securities Act of 5812, 9/42. Unauthorized access to data will be punished to the full extent of the 3L at W. B3 Gin P1 AYB at CK. Audi 0 F1 L38 1710-909-009. Voice 1. State your name for the record. Subject NA 901-836. Carter, Consuela Raul Klikitikik. Chief Warrant Officer 2, 728446-1982-334619. Terran Confederacy of Aligned Systems Military Services, Army, Terran Descent Human. Voice 2. Please state your name only. Subject NA 901-836. Carter, Consuela Raul Klikitikik. Chief Warrant Officer 2, 728446-1982-334619. Voice 1. Please elaborate on your nation of origin. Subject NJT 901-836. Terran Confederacy of Aligned Systems Military Services, Army, Terran Descent Human. Voice 2. We're just trying to understand how you ended up where you were. Subject NA 901-836. Carter, Consuela Raul Klikitikik. Chief Warrant Officer 2, 728446-1982-334619. Terran Confederacy of Aligned Systems Military Services, Army, Terran Descent Human. Voice 1. Sighing. We're not getting anywhere. End recording. The static cleared to show a paper gown-clad biped sitting on a chair. 2 legs, 2 arms. Bilateral design. Thickly muscled legs that made up 2/5 of the creature's height. Arms as long as the torso, another 2/5. The head had bilateral symmetry. 2 eyes, one on either side of the nose, closely set together. Long nasal passages down the middle of the nose. Wide mouth. Heavy calcium exoskeletal protrusions inside the mouth of carnivore ripping and tearing teeth. Hair on the top of the head was a wooden red color, same with the thin lines of hair above the eyes. Eyes were strange. The left eye was divided in half, blue on one side, green on the other. The right eye was cold gray. It had 2 large mammary glands on the upper torso, wide muscular shoulders, a thick neck, and the arms ended in powerful grasping hands with 4 digits and an opposable thumb on each. On the right temple was embedded a black metal plate with 5 tiny green pin lights. On the back of the neck, hidden by the chair, was a socket with a closed iris sealing it shut. In the left hand was a hollow projector, hidden by the way the being held onto the arm of the chair. On the left forearm was a barely visible grouping of lines that sometimes lit up and displayed runes, again hidden by the chair. The biped was looking over the plasteel straps that held down its arms, then up at the camera. A strip of plasteel across the brow held its head in place. Its legs were banded to the macroplast chair, with a band of plasteel across its stomach and another across the chest, crushing the mammaries to its torso. The light brightened, focusing on the face with blinding light. The eyes had a single pupil that contracted rapidly. The eyeball was trembling slightly in the socket, constantly moving, an odd trick of muscle and nerve. For a second the light caught the cornea lenses and made the eyes look like they were glowing a dull amber. From outside the view came a voice. Breathy and reedy, a Lurksu voice. "State your name for the record," it commanded. The pupil shifted slightly as the eyes looked left then right. The biped's voice was low, rumbling. Carter, Consuela Raul Klikitikik. Chief Warrant Officer 2, 728446-1982-334619. Terran Confederacy of Aligned Systems Military Services, Army, Terran descent human. Define, Chief Warrant Officer, for the record, the Lurksu voice commanded. The biped merely repeated its statement. Define Terran Confederacy of Aligned Systems, the voice commanded. The biped just repeated. Where, in galactic coordinates, is the Terran Confederacy of Aligned Systems located? The Lurksu asked. The biped just repeated its statement. The questions continued, but the biped only gave the same answers to every question it was asked.
Audio-video footage.
Salvage vessel Uvaru Tak Nastriku, petal of the stellar wind. Deep space salvage mission. The bridge was cramped, filled with as much equipment as the limited space would allow, but all of the surfaces were clean and well maintained. Enamel had been applied where it had worn off on the corners and edges. The 2.5D screens were clean and in good repair. The stool seats were patched where time had forced the stitches to give it up. In frame were 3 Lurksu salvagers. 4 legs at the bottom of their barrel-like torso, the feet all facing different directions, the knees raised up to a third of the way up the torso, the 4 hip joints surrounding a hard-lipped mouth at the bottom of the torso. 8 eyes ringed the torso, giving a full view around the Lurksu. 4 arms, each arm in between 2 legs. At the top were frond-like tissue that moved around to gather information. There were nozzles around the torso, allowing air intake and speech, as well as to allow the Lurksu to drink. One was standing back, near the captain's stool. The other 2 were leaning forward, looking at the screen. "What is it?" the captain asked. "Just a rock with high mineral content? Some kind of artificial object under all the dust," First Mate Hiluhi said. He blinked his eyes twice and nervously fluttered his fronds. It still had power. Not much. Sensors didn't pick up the power until we got within 5,000 meters. "How did you pick it up?" the captain asked. Sensor technician Lihumili tapped his fingers on his knees. "When we came out of transit space, it broadcast a tight beam transmission." "What did it say?" the captain asked. The sensor technician shook his fronds. "Unknown. We're still trying to decode it. Nearly 2 gigabytes of data in a half-second pulse. Nearly overloaded the communication buffers." The captain nodded. "Let's send the shuttle over with Inululu and Oalunu. See if we found something valuable or just another dead piece of Forerunner junk." The other 2 bridge officers nodded. Static, then a squealing noise, then the video came on. 2 Lurksu were in hard-shell suits, next to a robot that was designed to cut into Forerunner hull plating with either a plasma torch, a molecular cutter, or a pressurized acid needle spray. "No intact stencils or markings, Captain," Inula said, his voice low squeaking. He checked the robot, which was pressing its optics to a clear section of the hull that had the dust cleaned off. "Ikvu says there's atmosphere according to its laser spectrometer. Looks like nearly 98% argon with some trace helium, oxygen, hydrogen and carbon gas. Lots of dihydrogen monoxide frost inside. Makes it hard to see the surfaces inside. Hopefully it didn't corrode the inside too badly." Inululu paused a second. "There's a few lights. Looks like it still has power inside. Can you open it?" The captain's voice was tight with stress, the constriction of his speaking tubes making his voice slightly higher. "Can you open it, Ikvu?" Inululu asked the robot. The robot beeped back over the radio, moving over to another secton. "Ikvu says it can see the hatch on the other side. We'll put up an airlock between the shuttle and this thing, crack the door, see if it's good salvage," Inululu said. The captain nodded. "Hiluhi, get in close, but be ready to break contact. Damn the temporary airlock. Just get clear if anything goes wrong." He looked at Lihumili. "These Forerunner artifacts can be dangerous." The sensor technician rattled his fronds in agreement. Long moments passed while the shuttle maneuvered. Then the airlock was set up. The robot went to work, first trying to get the keypad to work. "Wait," Inululu suddenly said. The robot cut off the power impulses to the data plate, freezing in position. Inululu looked in through the frosted-over portal. "Looks like the computers are coming on." There was a tense minute or two. "All right, go ahead," Inululu said. Oalunu exhaled sharply through his breathing tubes. The robot managed to find the wiring for the door and applied power. The door made a grinding noise for a long moment, then suddenly retracted. Atmosphere gushed into the interior of the artifact as the pressure equalized. The inside was spacious by the standards of the Lurksu. Room to move around. Everything was covered in a thin layer of glittering H2O frost. There was light visible beneath the frost as the computers went to work. Oalunu moved up and wiped the frost away. Forerunner glyphs were streaming down the data screen. The robot moved in, drifting around, scanning everything. It suddenly stopped and made beeping noises across the radio. Oalunu moved up as the robot cleared the frost from the half-cylinder embedded in the wall. It was shiny, like chrome, glimmering and gleaming beneath the frost. "What?" the captain asked. "Ikvu says this not only has power, it's what is using the majority of the power," Oalunu said. He looked at one readout covered in Forerunner runes. "If I'm reading this right, and my Forerunner is a little rusty, power is at 7.62%, but... Oh my. What?" the captain repeated, voice tight with anxiety so high that his fronds had rolled up and retracted into his barrel-like body. "It says, occupant stable," Oalunu said. "Tja. Thrin. Thrint field intact. No disruptions or interruptions. There was silence for a moment. Current field activation time is... Wow. Is buffer overrun error, and that's it. It's been there a long time," the captain mused. Inululu looked up from one locker he had opened. "Looks like a hard suit designed for a biped." "Were the Forerunners bipeds?" the captain asked. Inululu nodded his fronds, then felt foolish, knowing his captain couldn't see them inside his vac suit helmet. Some. There were also octopeds, hexapeds, and quadrupeds. Some insect, some mammals, some reptilian. "Which was the occupant?" the captain asked. Part of him felt ecstatic. The Forerunner object was in excellent condition. Most Forerunner artifacts were heavily damaged by the war that destroyed them before the Lurksu had even developed much more than crude agriculture and animal husbandry, or by the long period of time that had passed. "Can't really see them. They look like a blurred rectangle inside," Oalunu said. "Must be the field." The captain clenched his 4 hands and relaxed them. "All right." He thought for a long moment. "Seal it back up. Bring it aboard. We'll sell it to the government." Device is from the Forerunner conflicts, consistent with wreckage previously discovered and identified as a life pod launched from a critically damaged starship. Forerunner iconography is present over the majority of the interior of object. 9173. Computer systems are adaptable and intact, without any apparent catastrophic loss of power. Estimations of space dust thickness puts the object at 34,183 years adrift. Interior of the object was kept at low-pressure atmosphere with a non-corrosive noble gas, argon, and at near true zero. Mechanical and electronic components were designed to withstand such environments for long periods of time, with multiple redundancies, and were in excellent condition. Singular occupant of the life pod was determined to be a member of the Forerunner species 17 to be exact, and from initial scans appears to be a female of the species. Mechanical implants, known as cybernetics, are implanted in the temple, accessing the brain, in the upper torso cavity, in the left forearm and hand, as well as a type of socket that has wiring access to what is, upon initial examination, gross and fine motor control as well as several other brain sections. Occupant is currently still under effects of the stasis field, although it is reduced to partial power, allowing examination by sensor systems. Computer systems have provided safe atmospheric pressure and gas mixtures, as well as safe gravity, radiation, and temperature levels. The wide range of highly dangerous environments that the subject can withstand without aid is concerning, to say the least. The subject, according to the computers, is comfortable at a low level of atmosphere that would have a high statistical change of damaging Luxru breathing systems. It is comfortable at levels of heat that would damage Luxru sensory organs and at levels of cold that would cause a Luxru to die of exposure. Radiation levels include high levels of UV and IR radiation. It is nearly immune to electromagnetic energies and can withstand approximately twice Luxru normal gravity as comfortably normal for its species. Additionally, the field appears to completely negate the passage of time through a method of emitting a type of field that prevents other fields and particles from interacting within the field. How this works, how it is created, how it is emitted is unknown, as it defies all known particle and field interaction sciences. Currently, it is the opinion of researchers that disengaging the field may be the only way to continue examination of the living specimen of species 17. Concerns as to the dangers cannot be stressed enough, as the evidence of the Forerunner conflict has left scars all over known space. From planetary bombardments that cracked continental plates and caused a resonance in the liquid planetary core, to shattered moons that have become rings, to damaged stellar masses, the evidence is clear. The Forerunners possessed vast power that they used to destroy each other in some kind of widespread conflict. While some state that a singular Forerunner represents a limited danger, nothing is known of the life form's capabilities beyond what it can survive in. Its dietary requirements, as provided by the computer, show that it can eat, digest, and gain nutrients from nearly anything biological, with a multi-layered immune system capable of even defeating a pus pocket creating infection beneath its dermal surfaces. That fact it can stand under its own muscular and skeletal design at 10 times Luxru standard gravity shows that it possesses immense physical strength and resilience. It is the findings of the scientific team that while the species 17F subject is viable for reanimation that utmost caution should be. The survival pod had been brought into a carefully constructed room. It had been removed, carefully and without interrupting power, into the facility and then into the room. White ceramic tile gleamed on the walls, floor, and ceiling. The lights were inset into the ceiling, providing light and shadow in the room. The room was at a high temperature, just over 295 degree true, with a humidity of 50%. The atmospheric mix was painfully low on oxygen, thin to any Luxru who would be unlucky enough to be caught in it, but still survivable to Luxru physiology. The scientists behind the cameras, one-way mirrors, and the windows all stared as a robot trundled up the survival pod and tapped the buttons in the sequence that the life pod's computer had given up after long research. The robot sped away as the lights changed color from a dull pale blue to a green. There was hissing as vapor exploded from the bottom of the tube. The cameras saw that the field went out. Inside was a biped, cold-looking bluish-white skin, hair on top of the head and above the closed eyes. It wore a single-piece item of clothing without arms or legs. The skin of the legs and the arms were covered with fine hair that was nearly invisible. The skin suddenly began to flush a peach color, the veins going from invisible to a bright blue, the color spreading from the left arm, across the body, into the face, and down the other arm. Temperature went from 153 degrees true to 310 true in a matter of seconds, steam and vapor rising up off the body. The top suddenly cracked open, withdrawing. The scientists tensed. Could the creature, this species 17F, endure reanimation procedures that looked brutal and painful? There was the popping of electricity, and instruments saw an electrical current that measured a shocking 1,000 volts and 20 amps pound through the middle of the subject's chest. Several of the scientists exclaimed in shock, sure the system was killing the subject as it jerked, its back arcing, its arms coming up, its knees flexing. The subject went limp. After a second there was a beeping and the whine of capacitors. This time the jolt was 1,500 volts and 25 amps. Again, the subject convulsed. The Luxru scientists argued to shut it down somehow as the subject collapsed limp. Another set of whines. 2,000 volts, 30 amps. This time the subject gave a whooping gasp, grabbing the edges of the capsule, kicking its legs. It sat up, coughing and hacking. It bent over the tube, retching and hacking, and spit out a large gobbet of clear gel-like substance. The scientists all leaned forward. They had all studied the lexicon the computer had provided. The creature convulsed, its abdominal muscles rippling, and it hacked up more clear gel. It hung over the edge, hacking for a moment, then wiped its mouth with a shaking hand. The scientists recorded it all. Some were surprised by the speed of the projectile it had vomited from its mouth. Others were astounded by the fact that the vomit had not come from its singular stomach, but had rather been violently expelled from its lungs in fast order. The creature sat up, looking around. "Oh, what the ever-loving, multi-use sexual expletive?" it asked. The scientists all rejoiced, grasping hands and dancing around with their 4 feet, their top fronds waving with joy. "It is a scientific specimen," Yuan Vuilulu stated, staring at the Marshal Department representative. "We only understand it because of the data provided by the intact computers on the object. It seems the Marshal Department would be more interested in the pod itself." The 2 agents from the Marshal Department, wearing official black sashes around their barrel-like body below the ring of eyes and breathing nozzles, just stared. The fact an object of such small size possessed a transit space drive, even though it was badly damaged, as well as weapons of great power listed as point defense/debris counters, and the object possessed the ability to project energy screens to protect itself despite its small size, should be more interest than the living subject, Yuan Vuilulu said. "We have our orders from the Dominion Scientific Council," the one of the left, who looked identical to the one on the right down to frond patterns, fluted coldly. "Orders which make no sense." While the subject refuses to answer questions and only responds by repeating the same phrase, does not mean that the Marshal Department will have any more success than our scientists have had, Yuan Vuilulu said, shaking his fronds. "I don't know what you expect to be able to wrest from the subject, but I think it is a mistake to apply Marshal Department procedures to it. We have methods you are unwilling to use," the right-hand Marshal agent stated. Yuan Vuilulu shook his head. "I would be careful approaching the subject with anything that it might consider to be violent," he said. "I, and many others, believe that the subject is only showing us what it wants to show us." The left-hand agent pointed at the screen, where the Forerunner subject was sitting on a strangely designed chair, staring out the window and drinking a glass of highly corrosive H2O with citric acid additives. "If comfort and ease won't persuade it to give us even the barest hint of information, perhaps applying some discomfort will work," the agent said. "Why is it that every time there is great strides of science to be made, the government chooses the most offensive, thuggish minions it could find, minions that would not be out of place working as bouncers in a particularly odious brothel in the storm drains below the lowest slum?" Yuan Vuilulu asked conversationally. Both agents jerked, one giving high tights flutings of offense. "As soon as you don't get what you want immediately, you jump to applying force," Yuan Vuilulu said, shaking his fronds in amusement. He pointed at the screen. "The subject, completely nude, can withstand temperatures that would roast or freeze you, eat things that would eat or poison you, withstand humidity that would leave you drowning in your own lung tissue, handle radiation that would cook you alive by merely adjusting the melanin content of its skin, handle gravity that would cause you to collapse into a heap of dying flesh." Yuan Vuilulu gave a fluting laugh. "I'm sure whatever discomfort you come up will have to be administered by robots," he laughed. "Be that as it may, the Marshal Department's Office of Scientific Inquiry will be taking possession of the specimen," the left-hand agent said. Yuan Vuilulu just shrugged. "Ah, yes, I had nearly forgotten. The Dominion Senate budgetary proposals are due next month. He leaned back slightly on his stool seat, clenching the hard lips of his mouth against the synthetic seat. I'm sure you can wrest some more energy credits from the Dominion taxpayer by taking over the specimen. When the two agents looked outraged, Yuanvilla laughed. Take it, he said, and get the fuck out of my office. The specimen sat on the constructed bench seat, looking out the window at the foggy day outside. The humidity was nearly 60%, making it foggy, the water vapor in the air choking and vision clogging. It narrowed its eyes several times, its eyes tracking something outside. Why is it acting like it can see through that soup? One of the guards asked. Who knows? It's a Xeno, another shrugged. Can't wait till we drop it off. It looks stupid, the third said. He motioned and nearly dropped his folded rifle. Nice job, half-arms, the first one teased. The specimen looked at the three guards. Nice job, half-arms, it repeated. The three blinked the eyes that faced the specimen. One reached up for the mouthpiece/earpiece on the sash below its eyes. There was a loud snap as the specimen broke the high tensile flexible plastic restraint, reaching across with blinding speed to grab the headsets of all three Luxru guards. It grabbed all three together with both hands and twisted its hands in opposite directions. Parts flew out. It dropped the twisted and mangled mess, then leaned back, bearing the meat-tearing dentation in its strangely placed mouth. The second one tensed his grip on the bar of his pistol, flipping his end wrist so that the brace slapped against his forearm, the projecting screen lifting up and into place. The tiny microservos oriented the screen on the specimen. The specimen reached out, put 3 fingers on top of the beam projection screen, and pushed its opposable thumb through the liquid crystal projection screen. The whole thing gave a squeal, and the magic smoke eked out of the screen as the specimen pulled its hand back. It put its thumb in its mouth, made a sucking noise as it withdrew its thumb from its mouth, then bared its teeth again. "It broke my pistol," the middle guard said. He lifted up the weapon, looking at it. The screen was punctured and the housing was bent at the top. The aiming servos were shredded and the battery had popped loose when the frame had warped. The middle guard shook his arm. Damn, that hurt. The left-hand one unfolded its rifle. The screen raised up, orienting, the small rotating sensor on the side beginning to twirl. The front firing assembly dropped down, then unfolded, allowing the left-hand Luxru to grab the aiming bar. The specimen watched with interested eyes. "Don't move," the guard said. The other one raised the burster up. It had a cuff around his forearm, the projection lattice snapping out nearly a half-meter from the cuff, his hand dropping down to the squeezable firing handle. The goggles dropped down over 2 of his eyes. "We have you targeted. Do not move," the right-hand guard said. The specimen gave a roll of their eyes, a strange ocular movement, then went back to looking at the foggy day outside. The right-hand guard passed the middle his blaster pistol, the middle guard unfolding it so the projection screen faced the specimen. "You just know they're going to make me pay for that," he lamented. The specimen just sat silently, their face expressionless, their eyes watching things in the fog that the 3 Luxru couldn't see. All 3 agreed, in the locker room, that they were glad to turn the specimen over to the power armor-clad guards.